Hello, welcome to this update for the U.S. and Canada. So let's see what's happening with this big cold front and some other systems in other parts of the U.S. and Canada. So first, the severe weather. We do have this light risk on the east coast from South Carolina to Massachusetts, a big area, and also the marginal from Florida to Rhode Island and even parts of Massachusetts. So let's see what we have. This mainly for wind, a 15% in the whole slide and a 5% around it. So be careful, some gusty winds, those storms. Hail, no areas, but tornado goes from Florida to southern Delaware. So be careful. The 2% and the 5% shows mainly North Carolina and southern Virginia, and even northeastern most North South Carolina. So be careful, especially the 5%, those areas. And severe thunderstorm winds and a few tornadoes are possible in eastern Carolinas and southern New England. Isolated severe thunderstorms may also occur in portions of Florida, so be careful in those areas, especially with the tornadoes and the winds. No thunderstorms tomorrow because this system will be gone, and later just some general storms on day 3 for Friday in parts of Texas and Oklahoma and Missouri and some areas of Arkansas, but nothing crazy. A storm or two. And the fire is already better, but still an elevated for Southern California. So be careful, and also the active fires there that started because of the extreme yesterday. So be careful. And the map here shows today that those severe storms on the east coast in the yellow, some heavy rain and flash flood in the red, and those areas of heavy snow possible near the Great Lakes, in Michigan especially, but also New York and Pennsylvania, and a bit into Ohio. It shows some freezing rain possible in Maine, and some mixed precipitation in that whole area, like from Tennessee to New England. It shows also some general snow in the white from Tennessee to Minnesota. It shows more there in Oregon, some possible Nevada, northeastern California. Some heavy snow in the mountains of Northern California there already, and some more lingering around Montana, South Dakota, and northern Wyoming. So be aware. Day 2 shows still some heavy lake effect in parts of New York and Pennsylvania, and still some in Michigan, especially the UP of Michigan and northern Michigan, those areas, and even to southern Ontario, and shows more just general snow throughout the Great Lakes there. In the northeast and parts of southern Canada, shows some general snow as well from South Dakota to Ohio. Those are some probabilities there. It doesn't mean that it will snow in all those areas. It might, some probabilities, but shows also shower too in Florida and Texas, and some rain already starting in California. You see the cold front approaching, some more heavy snow there in the mountains, and more snow for Utah, Colorado and Idaho, so some parts of Nevada and Oregon, especially like a little bit of freezing rain maybe possible in northern Oregon, but nothing that crazy. And shows more there like the mixed precipitation across the west. Day 3, we already get a big area across the Midwest for possible freezing rain, even to the plains, and some snow in the northern side of that, Minnesota and Wisconsin especially, even to South Dakota. Shows more mixed precipitation throughout the Midwest in those areas, the storms from Texas to Missouri, a shower too in Florida, and shows still some heavier snow in New York there and some parts of the Great Lakes. Shows more snow across the west, especially in Colorado and Utah, a little bit in Wyoming and Idaho. Heavier in some mountains of eastern Oregon and Washington, northern Idaho there, northern California still. So be aware, but that still might change. That's 2 days out. But the rain shows that marginal risk from North Carolina to New England, and be careful, but especially the slight risk across Maine and New Hampshire and parts of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and even into Vermont and Connecticut. So be careful there. The slight risk of flash flooding, so some heavier rain there today. Be careful. Day 2 nothing. Day 3 a marginal in California on Friday and in Oregon. Day 4, a marginal as well, a bigger portion of California and Oregon. And day 5, nothing there. So be careful, especially today. That slight risk. And the rain, uh, Thursday to Friday says day 1, but it shows tomorrow. It shows that rain there in the northeast, still some rain, but that's tomorrow. I don't know why it doesn't show today, but it does show already some starting in California in the west on Friday. Saturday shows the Great Lakes, the lake effect, and some there in Texas, still some showers, and mainly across the west, more rain. And later into Sunday, is Saturday into Sunday, so shows some heavier totals in California between Saturday and Sunday, especially during the day on Saturday. Be aware there, close to 3 inches or something, and more in the central U.S. Day 4 shows more Sunday a little bit further east in the Midwest and more across the West. Day 5, some more across Texas to Illinois, some rain on the East Coast as well next Monday to Tuesday. Shows more across the West as well. Day 6 shows some on the West, but mainly the central US and some areas. Day 7, a little bit more in Washington and Oregon, but shows some scattered showers in the central US. So day 1 through 7 shows the total of all these 7 days shows more than 5 inches in parts of California, especially along the coast there, northeast and northwestern California. So be careful in those areas, especially near the coast. But in the mountains there can be a higher threat of flash floods, so be careful. And shows more for Washington and Oregon, that rain across the mid-south and the northeast. So be careful. The winter precipitation, like the snow, shows already day 1. Now it's right, Wednesday to Thursday, because it's Wednesday. Shows some in Northern California, those probabilities, and higher probabilities the Great Lakes there, especially Michigan and New York and Pennsylvania. Some in West Virginia too, and other parts of New York. For Thursday shows heavier in the Great Lakes, so be careful with the lake effect. And this not forecast to be as heavy as what we had like 3 weeks ago, but you never know. This lake effect can be very heavy sometimes, so just stay safe from the accumulations and the snow squalls especially. And already shows heavier in California there, Thursday to Friday, so be careful. Day 3 shows more in Washington, Oregon, Northern California especially, some into Idaho. Day 4 shows summer probabilities across the west mainly. This is already Saturday to Sunday. Day 5 shows a thing or two on the west, and some on the northeast a little bit. The next Monday shows some across the mountains of the west too, and a thing or two in the Great Lakes. Next Tuesday, very little, shows some on the west maybe. So yeah, be aware those areas. And the hazards they do have here, day 3 through 7, mainly some here, some heavy snow in parts of Washington, day 3 through 7, and some heavy precipitation in California, and also some heavy precipitation in southern Alaska, and high winds, the Aleutian Islands and the Arctic there. So be careful those winds in Alaska, and the dates like 12, 13, so around the 13th. So be careful, and the flooding possible there in the northeast from this system. So be careful. Day 8 through 14 does show still some high winds across the north and the plains, and southern Alaska, and also on the west some like some high risk of high winds, and the light risk of heavy snow and the mixed precipitation. So be careful. And does show the snowfall potential here, so this is not the actual accumulation, but potential accumulation the next 72 hours until Saturday. So until Saturday they do have in some parts of New York close to the Great Lake like 36 inches, 30 inches or something. So this is showing that it could easily exceed some like 20 to 30 inches near northwestern New York there. In Pennsylvania, southwestern New York, some 18 to 24 inches, especially New York, but into Pennsylvania, some 12 inches, 8 inches, maybe into Ohio. This could change still, but be aware, shows more in Michigan, close to even 24 inches, and even more some spots in northern Michigan, so be careful. And does show in California, the Sierra Nevada, some like 4 to 15 inches, but northern California indicates more than like 36 inches, potentially close to 40 inches the next 3 days. Those areas, so be careful. Shows there, yeah, that's something else. So BR shows more in Oregon too, some 12 to 18 inches, some higher mountains, and lower mountains in some other areas, but shows in Idaho some lighter snow, especially in Washington, shows more. So be careful. The winter storm severity index does show mainly along the Great Lakes. This is some areas of extreme there near New York, there just south of Buffalo, and some areas further north. So be careful, some major there. So that's mainly snow amount, but snow load as well. Shows in Michigan some major impacts maybe, and Northern California, those specific very high mountains, some extreme impacts. So be careful with that snow, and because it can quickly accumulate to, like, I saw a few weeks ago in Europe here in the mountains, there was a bunch of snow. So be careful. And here for ice, the freezing rain doesn't really show anything, but this like Saturday, day 3, so it does show this big area of free freezing rain potential on day 3, and also close to some 70 to 80% probability. So this is the 24-hour probability of free freezing rain accumulating from throughout Saturday into Sunday. So shows like some 70 and even a small area of 80%. So this might change still, we're still 4 days out, but better watch. And Friday shows a little bit there, a tiny bit, and to Saturday morning starts climbing, especially Saturday night into Sunday shows a very high freezing rain potential there. So be careful. Before that, across Oregon and Washington, a finger or two, and into Canada there, and the Northeast, a finger or two, but nothing crazy. But now, like today, shows a little bit higher, some 20 to 30% near northern Maine and those areas, and eastern Quebec. So be aware of the freezing rain. The Appalachians, a finger or two, but nothing that crazy. And the snow, of course, very high, especially along the Great Lakes, the probabilities. So be aware. And here, uh, the temperature is still very cold in those areas, especially the wind chills, and that shows like the maximum temperatures today Wednesday around -5 Fahrenheit or something. So imagine the minimum temperatures tonight. So shows there all to -16 Fahrenheit. Those whiter areas maybe close to -18, -19 Fahrenheit or something. So please be careful with those wind chills and those cold temperatures. Stay warm, stay very warm, and shows some 30s all the way down to central southern Texas, some high 30s, and even some low 30s to northern Florida, some 20s and 30s along the southeast, especially some teens in the Midwest, and even some single digits in Wisconsin, Illinois, and those areas. So be careful. Some 30s the northeast, and some like -13 North Dakota, even close to -18, some -3. So stay safe. Those areas show some 20s in Kansas, Nebraska, some teens, and very cold in the high mountains of Colorado, close to like some 29, 23, but in the very high peaks, like close to 10 Fahrenheit, 9, or even less, shows like some teens as well in Wyoming, some 20s, and even some single digits in the high mountains. Montana, too cold, the mountains of California, some things in Nevada, and Washington, Oregon, some 20s and 30s, and so far is on the coast. So be careful. During the day tomorrow, Thursday, does show some negative still in the north, so like -4 Fahrenheit still in Minnesota, and even close to -5 North Dakota. Does show some 70s in Florida, some 60s in southern Texas, and 70s in southern Arizona, and still some 30s and 20s the Midwest and Northeast, and still some single digits in parts of Wyoming, not Wyoming, but like Minnesota and Wisconsin. So be aware. Some things the Midwest shows still cold in the high elevations of the West, even during the day. And Friday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, alright, it gets cold in the northeast, a bunch of 19, 18, 13 degrees, some 20s too, so be aware. And still some high 30s into northern Florida, Texas a little bit warmer, but shows some low 30s all the way down to northern Georgia, so be careful. So even still some minus 12, minus 13 Fahrenheit, northern North Dakota, so and northern Minnesota especially, so be careful. So like 2, 6 Fahrenheit, minus 4, so be careful there. It still shows some like some 20s and teens across the west, especially the high elevations of California, Colorado and Utah, and especially Wyoming, so be careful. So some teens there, and the wind chills shows also some 20s throughout Oregon, Washington, some 40s on the coast, but if very cold in the interior, Montana, those areas, so be careful. Friday during the day still shows cold across the north, not as cold, but still some 12, 14 Fahrenheit, some 10 Fahrenheit, and some 30s the northeast still. In the Midwest, some 20s and 30s, and shows some 70s in southern Texas and Florida, and some 60s in Arizona, southern Arizona. But you notice that the mountains remain cold during the day across the west, so this means that the cold air is coming in, especially at night. So be aware. And like talking about this into Saturday morning, already shows cold in Colorado, especially the high elevations, some single digits and things, 19, 29, 26, some 20s in Nevada, the mountains of California, so be careful. But still pretty cold into New York and parts of Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire, some teens like 15, 14, 16 Fahrenheit, so be aware. Some 20s there, some 30s all the way down to South Carolina, in eastern Tennessee, cold in the Appalachians, some 30s and more like 10, 7 Fahrenheit, especially northern Minnesota, close to like 9, 6 Fahrenheit or something. So be careful. Still some 20s in the Midwest, some 30s there, so be aware. And that day during the day, so Saturday afternoon, shows some 70s and even some low 80s southwestern Florida, more 60s in the south and 70s, and still cold in the very high elevations of the west, even during the day, some 20s and 30s, and shows still some 20s and 30s in the northeast still Saturday afternoon, and more across the north, some 20s there, so be careful. Saturday night to Sunday morning does show still some 60s around Florida and Texas, but the northeast some 15 Fahrenheit. Those purple areas might be close to like 9 Fahrenheit or something, so be careful. Or even less if you are like in a high elevation, and shows some 20s to Pennsylvania, New York, some teens, so be aware. Some teens and 20s in northern plains and northern Midwest, and some 30s other parts of the Midwest, so be careful. It shows like some teens and 20s the mountains of the west, especially in the high elevations there, so be careful in those areas. Day 5 during the day on Sunday, a little bit above average in the south, some 70s and 80s in Florida, 70s in Texas, and some 60s, and still very cold along the mountains of the west. During the day, some 20s, some low 20s in Wyoming, some high elevations, and Idaho in those areas. So be aware. Still some towards the northeast and in the north there. Monday morning does show colder across the west, some 20s and teens, much of the west, except on the west coast, right on the coast, but in the interior mountains, some 20s, 30s, and like some teens, 15, even like 10 Fahrenheit in those purples, 14 Fahrenheit in Nevada, some 20s, and even single digits in the higher parts of Wyoming and Idaho, so be careful. And some 20s in the plains and teens in the north, so be aware. Next Sunday to Monday, it's still kind of coldish the northeast. Monday afternoons a little bit better, some 40s there, but still some 20s and 30s the high elevations of the west in the northern plains, so be aware. Now Tuesday morning does show colder across the north again, so like 4, 6 Fahrenheit, and those very dark shades there, close to like 0 Fahrenheit or something, so be careful. Same thing for like Colorado, some 10, 15, 14 Fahrenheit, and the darker the purple gets, the colder it gets. Like those very dark areas, close to like 1, 2 Fahrenheit or something, and some teens and even single digits in Wyoming, the high elevations, some 20s, most of Montana, teens and single digits northeastern Montana, and especially the mountains of Idaho and Montana, very cold. Shows in California still, and northern Arizona colder, all the way to Oklahoma and Texas, some 30s. So be aware there. And day 7, Tuesday afternoon, still some teens and 20s in the north, and warmer in the south there, and cold across the high elevations. So be careful in those areas. Now the 48-hour snowfall from their model, they do have only the next 48 hours close to 30 inches in western New York and southwest and northwestern New York. So be careful those snow squalls and everything, especially near southwestern New York and some areas of northwestern New York shows 30 or like even 33 inches or something. Some in the Appalachians further south, a little bit in Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine, but very little, and shows close to 20 or even close to 30 inches near northern Michigan, 20, 15 inches there in the north. It shows right across the west. Next 2 days, some more snow in some parts of Nevada and Idaho, especially in the mountains of California, like 10 to 16 inches or even more, the very high peaks. It shows more in Oregon, Washington, some snow. Many into the Cascades and in other parts there, because on the coast barely nothing, but more in like the mountains in eastern in eastern areas. So be aware there. In Utah shows more as well, and some areas. But let's see in terms of rain, because the other side there showed only day 2. So let's see just the next 6 hours today, Wednesday, and let's see. So it shows more rain along much of the east. Some areas close to like 1.4, even 1.6 inches near Georgia in the next 6 hours. Shows the next 24 hours already start showing some 4, even like 3 inches, 3.5, close to 4 inches in Maine around the next 24 hours. So be careful there in Maine. Shows more, some 1 to 2 inches on other parts of the East Coast. So be careful in those areas, especially the northeast, and start showing across the west. Some are in 48 hours now, shows even a little bit more, but not that much of a difference. But be aware, and across the west shows more. And yeah, so be aware. And snow, I already showed snow, but does show some snow in parts of Montana and Iowa and the Midwest in some areas too. So be aware. Now the 24 max wind gust shows true wind gear across the east, parts of uh, coastal Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Cape Cod, and some areas show all the way to like 60 mile per hour gusts in the next 24 hours from the system. 60 to almost like 65, but not really 65, so like 60, 61 mile per hour gusts, or even higher depending where you're at. Some parts of Maine, like 40 to even 60 mile per hour gusts. Be careful on the coast too, and more, so like 40 to 50 in the Appalachians. Southeastern Wyoming still see some 60 or more mile per gust in some areas of 50 in that stretch of northern Colorado. So be careful. And along the mountains of California, some isolated areas in yellow shows always some 60 mile per gust or even more than northern mountains there. So yeah, be careful. And windier conditions for Florida, not windier, but a little bit more breezy there. So be aware in the southeast. Now, the warnings does show here some frost advisories in parts of northern Florida and Georgia, wind advisories parts of the southeast as well, and more like the flood watches already in the northeast, and they do have some lake effect snow warnings already for southwestern New York and northwestern New York. even to Pennsylvania. Some winter weather advisories in the Appalachians, and some wind advisories too, and some winter storm warnings in Michigan already. Some winter weather advisories there, and some heavy freezing spray warnings in parts of Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. So be aware. And shows some big blizzard warnings in much of northern Alaska, so be careful. Some wind warnings and advisories in Hawaii, especially the Big Island, and some small craft warnings. Shows already some wind chill advisories in the north, so that's many cold weather advisories. If you click in northern Minnesota, shows the cold weather advisory. Shows you the dangerously cold wind chills as low as 40 below zero could cause frostbite and exposed skin in little as 10 minutes. So please be careful. They mention wind chills close to minus 40 degrees. So please be careful. That's a possibility. And show some winter weather advisories in Montana and California, some wind warnings southeastern Wyoming, and some freezing fog advisories northern Oregon, and some so into advisories and air and dense fog advisories. Dense fog mainly in California, but more air stagnant advisories in Idaho parts of Oregon. So be careful, but these warnings change a lot. So check the link in the description to see the latest information. And be careful, northern Alaska, the blizzard warnings. Travel will be very difficult when widespread blowing snow significantly reduce visibility. The dangerous cold wind chills as low as 40 below zero could cause frostbite. So yeah, be careful in Alaska there. And in Canada, we have a bunch of warnings too, especially across the east. So shows here across the west some extreme cold in Manitoba. More there, extreme cold in all of those locations. So just find your location here and click on extreme cold, and it shows up here extreme wind chills as minus as almost like minus 40 degrees Celsius and colder continue. So a cold Arctic air mass has sailed over eastern Saskatchewan and southern Manitoba, and under this cold air mass, overnight lows drop near minus 30 and colder. These temperatures combined with northern winds of 10 to 15 km per hour should produce extreme wind chills of minus 40 and even colder. So please keep dry and stay warm. So be careful. Just find your location here to see more information. New Brunswick, we have the special weather statements, the wind warnings and rain warnings for the big system along the east coast coming. So rainfall warnings there. You just click on rain warning on rainfall and see the rainfall warnings here. So some heavy rain at times, be careful. And wind shows some wind warnings in some counties too. Strong winds that may cause damage are expected or occurring. And then some special weather statements for the season. Periods of rain and strong southerly winds are expected today into Thursday. So be careful. There are a bunch of other warnings and locations. Just click the link in the description to see the latest information. Newfoundland and Labrador shows some freezing rain warnings. In only some areas like freezing rain expected or occurring in some locations there, but this might change by the time you watch this video. Some wreck house wind warnings, very strong winds expected, and more freezing rain. So be careful. Special weather statements in much of those areas. Unseasonably warm temperatures followed by rapid drop in temperatures in parts of Labrador, and some more special weather statements there. So be careful. Nova Scotia, some wind warnings, and yeah, some many wind warnings. I'll show you those winds in a second. They'll be very strong. Some winter storm watches in some parts of Nunavut, some locations there. So significant winter storm will impact town sites in southern parts of Baffin Island starting Thursday morning and through Friday morning. So be careful there. And in Ontario, there are a bunch of warnings there too. Some snow squall watches in some areas, extreme cold warnings in Western Ontario, and some snow squall warnings already. Some fog advisories too in the morning in some areas. So be aware. These warnings might change soon, but also some rainfall warnings more southeastern Ontario in some areas, and some frozen ground might make it more dangerous too. So be careful. The extreme cold, rainfall, and snow squalls there. And Quebec, there are even more wind warnings and rainfall warnings, especially wind and rainfall. So be careful. Rainfall amounts 40 to 60 millimeters are expected, might be heavy at times, and wind warning, especially high southwest wind in eastern Quebec. Some freezing rain. I showed you some probabilities before. There's some probabilities of freezing rain in Quebec today. It shows more rain, wind, freezing rain, just a bunch of stuff here. So please be careful. Check this link in the description. Find your location here with the warnings. So stay safe. And now shows here the winds. Let's see, because the system's getting started there, and then Thursday the European model has all the way to like 95 km per hour gusts in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, some very high gusts as well. Shows more in New Brunswick, close to 100. In eastern Quebec, the European has all the way to 112, 100, 107. So please be careful those wind gusts there. This goes to Thursday into Friday, shows more widespread stronger gusts in Labrador and Quebec. So be careful in eastern Quebec, some channels of water there. It shows more in Newfoundland, close to 100, some 90 km per gust. So stay safe there. And northern Quebec as well shows some higher gusts, northernmost Labrador. So be careful in those areas. Thursday, Friday still shows some, especially in Labrador, but northeastern Quebec as well. So be careful those gusts. Friday, Saturday, still Labrador and Quebec, and then it finally calms down next Tuesday before we might have to monitor more systems on Thursday the 19th across Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So yeah, be careful there. There are some different models too. For example, the GFS shows right 104 km per gust in southern Nova Scotia, and the GFS increases to like 111, 112 in southernmost Nova Scotia, 114 some islands, and it has like 108 in New Brunswick, 111. So please stay safe from those wind gusts. And northern Maine, especially on the coast, go close to 72 mile per gust, even 73 according to the GFS. So stay safe there. Now this continues in eastern Quebec, shows more, and Thursday into Friday, and be careful in Newfoundland and Saint Pierre, Miquelon, and some other areas. More into Labrador, some higher gusts on Friday, and late on Thursday. Northern Quebec, the GFS has some very high gusts late on Thursday too. So be careful. Friday, just like the European, has some very high gusts central northern Quebec, more into Labrador. So be careful. Northern Ontario shows slightly higher too. And Friday into Saturday, still some high gusts in Quebec and Labrador. Shows even Sunday, central Quebec, and this goes away there before next Wednesday, the 18th. Already shows more stuff in Nova Scotia. So yeah, be careful those winds. And now on the west, it's mainly quiet now in terms of gusts, but as you heard the warnings for the wind chills, we will have some breezier conditions in some areas. So Wednesday, Thursday shows maybe a little bit breezier in a spot or two there. Friday into Saturday shows maybe starting late on Saturday, southern Vancouver Island and some areas, because of the system along the west. Shows again in Alberta on Sunday, a little bit higher southern Alberta, and especially like southwestern British Columbia, southern Vancouver Island, close to 100 km per gust. So be careful Sunday, that system. This goes still a little bit breezier Monday, the 16th, southern Saskatchewan and Alberta. And later the Europeans like crazy cyclones there on the Pacific. On the 18th, more winds across the west, and has even more later. So yeah, be careful across those areas, and across Nunavut and some areas with the blizzard watches. They do have a little bit breezier conditions in some areas, especially the north and northwestern territories, along the Arctic, and Nunavut in some areas, a little bit higher gusts, but nothing that crazy, but a little bit breezier until Saturday. So yeah, and in terms of like snow accumulation, there, let's see. So the European does have across Quebec widespread to 30 centimeters, even to like 58 in some areas near Hudson Bay, northern Quebec more than 47, some areas some 35 centimeters in Quebec, shows southern Quebec a little bit less, but some 4 7 centimeters into Ontario. Those areas with the lake effect shows close to even 30 28 centimeters southwestern Ontario there. So be careful. Western Ontario shows some more snow the next 5 days, but nothing that crazy. A little bit lighter in central Ontario. So yeah, be aware. And because shows this field of snow there, and then shows more across Saskatchewan, northern Alberta especially, and more parts of Manitoba, in eastern Manitoba, and across the west already shows like some 62 centimeters, some 50 centimeters, so be aware there. In southern British Columbia and Alberta shows more like into northwestern territories a little bit, into like Yukon shows some snow, and eastern British Columbia shows some the next 5 days too, a little bit lighter in Nunavut. So be aware, the GFS is a similar thing. The GFS is even more in Quebec, but a similar amount. Shows more to southern Quebec as well, Labrador, some in Newfoundland and Labrador, especially Newfoundland, and a finger to Nova Scotia and northern New Brunswick, some snow. And the GFS has Vancouver Island all the way to like 144 the next 5 days. So be careful there. The icon, wait, here. The icon is more in western Quebec as well, and those areas, some in Ontario. So yeah, be careful. But here the European just until Friday, the next day or so, alright, shows that heavier snow in Quebec, more like until Saturday, more in Quebec and starts across the west, and until Monday, alright, some more across central Canada in some areas. So be careful. And in some northernmost areas too. So now Wednesday shows that snow across the east, in Quebec especially, some heavier snow, and some in Ontario, shows in New Brunswick some more, but especially some heavy rain in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland until Friday, and more snow in Quebec and Labrador there. Shows Sunday some snow northern Quebec still, and that corridor of snow in Ontario, Manitoba. Monday shows more snow in Ontario Monday, and more into later next week in Quebec in some areas. So the west shows some snow already, the mountains of British Columbia, Yukon, and shows that snow in northwestern territories and Nunavut, more near the Hudson Bay, northern Quebec, northern Ontario and Manitoba. More to northeastern Manitoba, Friday shows more across British Columbia, the west especially, and shows like on Saturday the 14th some heavier snow British Columbia into the northwestern U.S. So yeah, especially some heavy rain into Oregon and California. So yeah, and does show that freezing rain on Saturday possible in Iowa and those areas, and some snow just to the north of it. So be aware to Sunday, next Monday, some more snow central northern U.S. and some storms there even across the east. So be careful, the snow and those things. So stay safe. Now, just some windows for California when that system comes in. So shows some high gusts on Thursday, late on Thursday, some mountains there, and this goes into Friday. But the system arrives late Friday into Saturday. So shows all the 50 mile per gust in Northern California, in Oregon there, some higher gusts. Friday into Saturday, the Europeans all the way to like 1 to 66 mile per gust. Some mountains on Northern California, more throughout the Sierra Nevada, especially in the coast, some 59, 51, even to 60 mile per gust. So be careful in Oregon, southern Oregon. It shows more across parts of Idaho and eastern Oregon. It shows some in Colorado and Wyoming too. This is already Saturday into Sunday. There's still some strong winds from much of central northern California, especially on Saturday night. And Washington already shows some 54 to even like 60 mile per gust in northern Washington because of that system. Saturday night into Sunday, and shows more later into next week. And the Europeans are some very big gusts on Tuesday the 17th in the plains, Monday across some parts of the Rockies, even to like southern Rockies. So be careful. those areas. And now here the show at the 2 meter temperature, very cold there, those like minus 30, minus 20 across much of central Canada and into northern Canada. So please be careful those temperatures. Does show here at the Europeans like some minus 28, but that's Friday. Now Wednesday show like especially Nunavut, some minus 34, some minus 33. So be careful in those areas. Shows more to like Saskatchewan and Manitoba, some minus 30, minus 28. And the wind chills will be close to minus 40 degrees Celsius. So please stay safe. This cold air keeps moving east through Quebec and Ontario. It's way colder in Ontario, except the south, but shows more like west, eastern Alberta, northern Alberta, very cold British Columbia, even Yukon, northwestern territories, some minus 17, minus 8, minus 12. But this like right now, Thursday morning, those shows some minus 34, some minus 37 degrees in Saskatchewan, so like minus 27, minus 30 in Manitoba. So be careful. Southwestern Ontario, like minus 24 to minus 30, and already spreads to southern Ontario. Those negative temperatures tomorrow morning for central northern Ontario and especially western northern Quebec, very cold. So be aware. And Nunavut close like minus 35, northwestern territory, especially along the east, very cold. Most of British Columbia already. So Thursday, Friday, this goes. Much of Quebec is now very cold in New Brunswick. From Thursday to Friday, that cold air comes in, especially western Quebec, Ontario, like very cold, so minus 18, minus 20, Manitoba, so minus 29, so minus 34, minus 35 in Nunavut, very cold in Alberta, especially Saskatchewan along the east, British Columbia, already showing like northern northwestern territories and Yukon starting those very cold temperatures again. So be careful. Friday into Saturday shows this cold air from the Arctic digs down to Yukon, some minus 37, minus 35, northwestern territories and Nunavut. So be careful. Still shows in Ontario and Quebec all the way to minus 17 or something. So be careful, especially northern Ontario, central Quebec, southern Quebec, and like northern Quebec as well. So be careful there. And Newfoundland Labrador, a little bit colder too. Nova Scotia, some negative temperatures. And yeah, so be careful. In Alaska, very cold as well. And shows Saturday into Sunday. Uh, this cold air just keeps coming down there to northern British Columbia, northern Alberta too. Some spots of Yukon close to like minus 42 degrees Celsius. So that's extremely cold. The wind chills might be close to minus 50. So please stay safe. Northwestern territories, more like through Yukon, through Nunavut. So be aware, northern Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan are already getting very cold, a little bit less cold in Ontario, but Quebec still very cold by next Monday. But Monday to Tuesday, the cold moves east a little bit, but still very cold for central western Canada there. And this comes down to Ontario again, Manitoba on Wednesday, Thursday. So yeah, be careful in those areas and stay safe, especially the wind chills there. Some very, very dangerous wind chills. So be careful and stay safe with everything else.